how does coronary artery disease develop? There is a misconception among many people that it's a passive process where arteries gradually silt up, a bit like in a stagnant pond where mud settles down to the bottom and gradually furs it up. It's not like that at all. It's an active inflammation. And this inflammation occurs on the lining of the coronary arteries, which are the little tubes that deliver the blood into the heart muscle. And those arteries, when they get inflamed, there is an intense inflammatory reaction, as there is anywhere in the body when there's inflammation, when the body fights the inflammation and tries to repair it. And this process, which is very complex and can take place over many, many decades, is mediated by certain powerful stimuli. For example, cigarette smoke. Low-density cholesterol, commonly called bad cholesterol, when it gets into the body and it starts to be altered in the body, it acts like a stinging nettle to the lining of arteries and causes intense inflammation. High blood pressure, diabetes, and of course all sorts of genetic factors that we don't really understand. And there are risk factors we haven't identified yet. But the bottom line is that this inflammatory reaction leads to a build-up of cholesterol and other fatty products which get stuck on the inside of the artery, a bit like chewing gum to the bottom of your shoe. And over the years, this inflammatory process builds up so that the arteries become lined with this. And like anywhere in the body, when there is inflammation, you get healing and repair. And as part of the healing and repair process, little flecks of calcium or chalk are laid down. And this is something we can actually see in the lining of arteries at a very early stage. We know that inflammation and chalky deposits go together because if you look at anyone who has inflammation, you take sportsmen, for example, who have repeated trauma to their hips and knees, you see calcium or chalk laid down, you can see it on the X-ray. If you have an inflammation in the liver, you can see little areas of chalk. And this happens in the arteries as well, but on a much smaller scale. These plaques, as we call them, which are the deposits of fatty deposits and fat and little bits of blood clot and chalk, can take years and years to build up inside the arteries. But some of these plaques are very dangerous, and they're the ones that contain a lot of cholesterol inside them. And the plaque has a lining called a fibrous cap, which separates the cholesterol from the blood flowing through the arteries. Now, what can happen in a matter of minutes in a previously well person is that this cap can break open, a bit like the top blowing off a volcano or an earthquake shattering the ground, and suddenly the cholesterol inside this plaque is exposed to the blood flowing through it, and a clot can form. This explains why people can die suddenly. If the clot suddenly blocks off the artery, then someone who was previously well a day before, an hour before, can end up having a massive heart attack or even a sudden death out of the blue. And that's one way that coronary disease can prevent, and that's at its most dramatic and most dangerous. But if it's allowed to progress unchecked and it doesn't cause a heart attack, then the inflammatory process gradually leads to a more and more build-up of cholesterol so that your artery gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and that's when angina starts to occur.